Hammer. I actually just graduated this year, COVID class 2020, and I got into undergraduate research the summer after my freshman year. I was an intern with the National Park Service at Cedar Breaks National Monument, and I essentially had a question about wildlife in the park, and my manager didn't have a clue about the answer. And thankfully, I had a mentor who's an extension professor out of Cedar City, and she had some resources for me to use, and we came up with a rough idea for a project, and I hit the ground running. And ever since then, I've been heavily involved in expanding that wildlife project out of Cedar Breaks. And um, during that summer, with the experience I gained, I applied to the undergraduate research fellowship at Utah State University. And then last year, I applied for the Goldwater Scholarship as well, using that research project at Cedar Breaks as the application backbone, essentially. The Mesa Arch at sunrise. I woke up way too early for that picture, but it's Mesa Arch in Canyonlands National Park at sunrise. And yeah, it's just this really cool spot where essentially you're on this elevated area that's probably like 3,000 feet above the surrounding floor, the Colorado Green River drainage basin. And yeah, that's kind of overlooking that. So what's next for me? Well, this summer I have a couple month long job to kind of hold me over until the fall. And in the fall, I'm hoping to really start working on a NSF GRFP. I'm hoping to get into grad school this coming spring. I got an email from it was Dr. David Peak, essentially inviting like a room full of people to go to the kind of like open house information session. And I went there not even knowing what the Goldwater Scholarship was, other than reading kind of about it online before that. And I didn't think that it, or essentially to me, it was like a long shot. And I didn't think that I necessarily was going to have a good chance. I always thought of my project as just this kind of little simple thing, not necessarily a very complex, complete society changing project, and still ended up getting it. So like, yeah, even if you like, I guess, have doubts about applying to the Goldwater Scholarship, I would at least go to that meeting and talk to Dr. David Peak, tell him about your project, because he knows what potential looks like and whether or not you see that in your project. He can certainly tell you if you should try to pursue it, even if you're doubtful. So for me, my application experience was a couple of things. First off, it was a lot of just in-depth thinking about my project and how it can actually be of greater significance. Initially, while applying to the Goldwater Scholarship, I didn't see my project as a very significant project, like it would make any sizable contributions to necessarily the actual like literature. But after talking to Dr. David Peak and others in the College of Natural Resources and other resources that you'll have available to you during the Goldwater Scholarship application, you can further be inspired about your research. And I wasn't further inspired about my research. And that helped a lot with the application process, which I essentially had to write a short essay about my research project, and kind of just a really condensed version of all of the grants that I wrote in the past. So really summing up the important factors for anyone who would read that application. And then on top of that, coming up with a possible future research project as well. And on top of that, there was a student essentially questionnaire where the Goldwater committee and the people looking at your application will essentially just get to know you and your different research experiences, what you've done for work, what your future plans are, academic and research wise, and just getting a bigger picture of who you are. And yeah, overall, this experience was wonderful for me. It really helped to solidify that I eventually do want to go into research at a university and try to, yeah, spend my life in research essentially. The one thing I wish I would have known, I think, is that there's just a lot of resources on campus that are very willing and happy to help you with completing your application. It isn't a I'm going to tackle it all by myself sort of application, or it doesn't have to be. Rather, you can use the Science Writing Center or Dr. David Peak. At numerous instances, I had people in the College of Natural Resources, after I was selected as one of Utah State's finalists, approach me saying, hey, I'm more than happy to look at your application and just get another pair of eyes and another brain contributing to your application. And I would highly encourage you, if you decide, or anyone, if they decide to apply to the Goldwater Scholarship during the application process, reach out to as many people as possible to kind of get yourself your own little committee to help you and improve application. Something else about the Goldwater Scholarship application, with the application boot camp, you'll be essentially guided with a timeline of when all of these components should be in their rough draft state, final draft state. But I really encourage you to start off getting as much down as you possibly can, not really holding off till last second. You don't need a perfect draft anytime soon, but a lot of this application process is just thinking about what you want to say, because you have limited words to actually use in your research essay essentially. So you want to make sure to leave plenty of time for you to essentially write and look over it numerous times and slowly edit or totally revamp and rewrite your application. Spring, one of the big things is trying to think about yourself as, and really focusing on what makes you unique and what really strong skills you have, and be as specific as possible where you can really contribute to your field and what experiences you have had in the past that really sets you apart, and really spending time to brainstorm and stew on that. What makes you different and what makes you an awesome applicant for whatever you're applying for, whether it be grad school, NSF, GRFP, or the Goldwater Scholarship, or anything else. Really thinking about what makes you unique and someone that's another person would love to have you on their team or as a part of a fellowship. Really think that essentially Utah State has a humongous amount of resources, a very large amount of resources for students to tap into to get aid with essentially anything they need, especially in research. As a research institution, we have a lot of formalized ways that students can get involved with research, get resources for research. And part of this is, as in the past, Dr. David Peak, he's had the Goldwater Scholars like boot camp, the application boot camp. Just the investment that the university is willing to put into students that are wanting to dream big, go big, and to essentially follow any questions that they have. The university is extremely supportive and ready to throw all of its resources at you as a student. You just essentially, as a student, have to just not be afraid to say, hey, I have this idea, because an army of people will soon support you, essentially.